Welcome, residents, to the Dr. DC podcast. My name is producer Richard, and next to me is the Doctor himself.
Hello.
Each week, we talk about the weird and wonderful world of DC while fielding questions from listeners like you. Ooh. Yeah, that's right. And to keep that going on, we are joined by writer for Shudder's Horror Noir and HBO's Doom Patrol. Please welcome Ezra Daniels.
Yo. Nice to be here.
Yeah, thank you so much. Thank you so much for joining us. We're really looking forward to this.
Yeah, I like that Shoshana literally just like shoved you under the bus and was like, he'll do it.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah, Shoshana match made for us for this one. Yeah.
I appreciate you saying that you're looking forward to it because we just planned this yesterday. So you're looking forward to this for a whole 24 hours. Yes, 24 hours.
That is further in the future than I usually plan. So
I mean, that's very true. I also have been looking forward to it for the last 4 hours because I basically went, who? And then I went, ooh.
Well, I mean, every time we have somebody new on the show, I always like to figure out like what's your relationship to like nerd stuff. Doesn't even have to be comics. I mean, I would assume though, as a writer on Doom Patrol,
and obviously the foremost expert on Doom Patrol.
Well, as a writer on the show, you've at least been exposed to a little bit of it. But were you into comics or superheroes or things like that beforehand, or is this like a kind of newer thing for you?
No, I was absolutely super into comics, super into superhero comics. But I think for the past probably 20 years, I've been more into the indie side of comics. So sure. I think one of the reasons I'm like known as the guy who knows a lot about comics is because I actually make comics. But I do stuff for like publishers like Fantagraphics and Oni and stuff like that. So it intersects a little bit with the big two comics, but not a whole lot. So like, obviously before I got the Doom Patrol gig, I knew who Doom Patrol was, but I wasn't super familiar with the comic books. So when I had my first meeting with the showrunner, Jeremy Cover, it was just like a few all-nighters of reading all the comic books that I possibly could.
Sure,
so I could come into the meeting with a little bit of knowledge, but yeah, that's where I'm coming from.
Well, so I mean, when you're doing that kind of like crash prep, where did you start? Like where did you go to look to figure out like what are the things I should have some knowledge of, or what are the couple of the things I should read? Where did you get that info from?
Well, I was limited by what I could access immediately and also what I could afford. Because this is my second TV writing gig, and before that, for my whole life, I was a starving artist. So like, I'm not someone who just like, okay, I got a gig, I'm going to go to the comic shop and drop $50 on this TPB or whatever.
Totally. Sure.
So I'm a huge user of this app called Hoopla, which is a free comics a reader app that you can get through your library. So I went on to Hoopla. I went to see what Doom Patrol comics they had. And thankfully, they had the entire Grant Morrison run.
Oh, wow.
And they actually had a lot of the Silver Age stuff, too. But I started with the Grant Morrison stuff because I knew the show was pulling mostly from that. And I read all that. But then I kind of feel like I like the Silver Age stuff.
Right.
I don't know if I want to say I like it more, but the illustrations in the Silver Age stuff are so beautiful.
Yeah.
And since I come from an illustration background, too, I was just like really drawn to the Silver Age stuff aesthetically. Like I have some drawings of Silver Age Cliff on my Instagram where I just like I saw that how, like wide and sexy he is.
Yeah.
Not that he's not sexy in the Grant Morrison stuff, but there's just like this like really like debonair, just like
he looks this like skinny like.
There's something kind of interesting about the gold robot body and then like black briefs.
Yeah.
Right.
Like, yeah. That's awesome. That's amazing. Okay, so the Silver Age stuff, I feel, is like maybe what people think of less with the Doom Patrol because the impact of Morrison and Gerard and Pollock and Gerard Way and stuff like that is so
like omnipresent,
huge. Yeah. Like the Doom Patrol is almost synonymous with like weird crap, and it used to just be synonymous with like kind of strange crap.
Yeah,
like it's kind of interesting to be in there. Do you have any kind of was there like any kind of favorite moment or like interesting character or anything from those Silver Age ones that stood out to you when you were reading them?
Yeah, there is one. I can't remember the specifics. I just have a terrible memory for remembering specifics, especially story stuff. I don't know.
Me too. Don't worry.
The wrong industry for me to be working in, but I remember there's an early story with I think Dr. Janice, where Dr. Janice had created. It's kind of like a Mysterio in the Spider-Man movie kind of thing, where he's creating these illusions that everybody was experiencing, but everybody but Cliff, because his brain was protected by his robot skull.
Right.
And that was just like a really fun, mind-bending story, and I felt like a lot of those Silver Age stories are obviously really simplistic, and I like that about them because they're so easy to get into, and like the characters are so clearly drawn. But that one had like a really fun kind of like prototypical Morrison like edge to it.
Totally.
I really appreciated.
That's awesome. That's really cool.
I
know you watched the show, Richard.
Yeah.
But beyond that, like in the comics you've been reading and as you've been getting into stuff, has the Doom Patrol shown up in any of the stuff you've been reading?
Not in a huge way, but what has been sort of like more I've noticed is more of like the weird random stuff that like I've seen on the show, or like that I know is synonymous with Doom Patrol, like characters or moments and things like that, like the Challengers of the Unknown, that kind of thing, like,
the kind of side
that stuff. I mean, I got really hooked into Challengers of the Unknown. I've gotten a few issues now, and I'm really loving that like Silver Agey stuff. I think for me, it's a thing that I want to dive in more. I do have Morrison's Doom Patrol here, and I really am loving that. But it's a thing that like is harder to come by. Like when I like dive into comic book shots and stuff like that, even still, like you can't find a lot of the old Doom Patrol stuff.
Yeah, it's true. It's not like there's a ton of it out there. I think I only actually physically own like 3 of the kind of recent trades, like stuff from the last 10 years, and like the Doom Patrol Suicide Squad special. And then maybe some odd here or there random issues, or them appearing in a book I was getting anyway, like Justice League or something like that.
It's funny though, because it's totally up my alley. Like the things that I go to comic book shop, I'm like, give me your weirdest shit. Like that's the stuff that I look for, is like, give me stuff that's like not well known, obscure, or weird. Like that's the kind of stuff that I go for. So it's definitely something that I am like interested in.
Well, I don't want to put words in your mouth or anything, Ezra, but I would think like, you know, the Doom Patrol in comics kind of has an attitude towards like the capes, right? Like the superhero community that I feel like makes it a good entry point for people that come from maybe more indie comics, right? Superhero comics are such like they can be or appear to be a real monolith. It's not necessarily true, but they kind of feel that way sometimes from the outside. The Doom Patrol is so much more about like them as characters, and the heroics are almost incidental. It feels to me like that's the bridge in if you're coming from indie comics, where you're starting at story and then getting into kind of the other stuff.
Yeah, absolutely. I feel like that's why. Yeah, I mean, if I read a lot of superhero comics still, but like if I was going to work on a superhero comic or a superhero property, I feel like it would have to be something like Doom Patrol, because I am that kind of like you know, I am that like misfit guy who's like always making fun of stuff and always like trying to take down, like you said, the monolith kind of thing. Like I feel like I was reminded of probably like 10 years ago, DC did an anthology series called, I think it was called Bizarro Comics, where they had a bunch of indie comics creators do takes on mainstream superhero characters.
Right.
And that was one of those things where like all my friends got to do that and I wasn't invited. I was just like, oh, this is what I should be doing. So I feel like that's always been part of what I wanted to do. And I just like never really had the opportunity, because I was just like, I took the divergent path in comics, so it's super exciting to be able to mess with it in this world now.
Yeah, that feels like a ton of fun.
Mm-hmm. Do you find that like I mean, I know that this is a fairly newer gig for you, but do you find that like working in this sort of format has now like changed the way that you're looking at comics now? Like, is it doing a bit of the reverse as well?
That's a really good question, to which I have no good answer to. Like I've been doing TV writing for 2 years. I started right before the pandemic. Yeah. And right before that, I put out my last graphic novel. It's called Bottom Feeders. And so since I've just been doing nothing but TV writing since then, I really haven't had an opportunity to go back and make comics. Now, I totally intend to, and I'm excited about doing that. Like, I'm never going to leave comics.
I hope you do. Yeah.
So I don't really know exactly how it's affected me, other than I feel like I've learned to have a much, like, I've learned to work faster, which I think is great. Like my big breakout book, I think the book that got me into the TV industry is called Upgrade Soul. It came out in 2018. And that book took me 20 years to finish because I was working on a day job and I had like other gigs I was trying to juggle at the same time. So it was just like one of these things I was chipping away at. And I also just like was really giving myself a lot of space to noodle on stuff and like refine stuff and redo stuff as I got better. Like as I became a better writer over the course of those 20 years, I'd be like, I'm just going to rewrite this 100 pages because I feel like I can do it better now. Right. And I don't have that luxury now as a screenwriter. So I think that's probably a good thing because I don't think that type of noodling helped me in my career. Certainly not financially. So I think it's just a lesson learned.
So was Bottom Feeder the follow-up to that one, or?
They're not related, but they're two books. But
that's what I mean. Sorry, it's the one you did after that, though. Did you find was it challenging to go from, like, I mean, it's like second album syndrome, right? Like, was it challenging to go from something you spent your whole like life building and then going into like the thing that now I just got to put up the next thing?
No, because they were so. I mean, I was working on them concurrently, and they just happened to be released a year apart. So, like, I really didn't have that sophomore slump fear going into releasing the second book. I was just like, whatever. And also, like, I've been like trying to break into comics for the whole time I was working on Upgrade Soul. I was trying to break into comics. So at this point, it's like, fuck it. Like, I don't like if nobody wants to read this book, I don't care really. Like, I put this thing into the world, and I'm just gonna keep doing the stuff I want to do. So I was like one step away from like stopping. Giving up and just being like whatever. So I think it's a good attitude to have.
Yeah, for sure.
It doesn't sound very good when I'm like explaining it, but at the time I was just like, it's like whatever. This is fun. I'm having fun living my life, and if nobody else digs it, then
I mean that's what makes good art, right? Like is like it's caring more about the art than the like the reception of it. So that's awesome. Well,
I like that perspective.
Yeah. With that, why don't we get into all the questions that we got today?
Yeah, we got a bunch of questions. We're talking specifically.
Oh, you know, we haven't really said yet
about villains of the Doom Patrol.
That's right. Which is something that the show does so well, I think.
Yeah, I mean, when you think about characters that have like their quote unquote rogues galleries, and there's really like 4 or 5 characters that I think the general kind of comic nerd community, or even just general public,
with them,
would be like, they've got a bunch of good villains. And it's like Spider-Man, bunch of good villains. Batman, bunch of good villains. You kind of get to like Superman and Flash are kind of like a tier down from that. And then unless you really know comics and you know that like secretly Firestorm has a bunch of great villains or Green Lantern or something like that, then you're kind of like, I don't know. And it's crazy on the show and in the comics to see like how many adversaries the Doom Patrol has, and some of that is because in the Silver Age they were some one and dones and things like that, and some of it is like the crazy creativity of those later runs that made these really iconic things. You know, like the D-Creator, that just an eye in the sky is such like a powerful image that it's like, well, that's got to stick around. We got to get that in there.
Yeah, that's awesome.
It's kind of wild.
So why don't we get into the questions, which means we're starting on Facebook.
Go to the face and the book. Go to the Facebook.
First question comes from Stephen Marion Almagro, who asks, of course, when we're talking about villains that are synonymous with Doom Patrol, please talk about Beard Hunter.
Beard Hunter. So Ezra, what's your experience with Beard Hunter? Is it just the show? Did you ever like, I think it's the Morrison run, right? You must have come across the comic Beard Hunter at some point, right?
Yeah. I did read the Beard Hunter comic. The Beard Hunter version that's on the show was I got the job starting with the 3rd season, so that was before my time with the Doom Patrol. But it's one of those things where like there's some things in the show I will say that like you can tell that the writers just like were having a field day playing with this like concept, and I think the Beard Hunter is definitely one of those things where just like even now like no spoilers for what we're working on now, but like
Yeah.
Beard Hunter is not exactly like a priority. Bringing his character back, but it's still one of these things that like it comes up constantly in the room because it's just like such a fun random thing.
Yeah.
And yeah, I mean, I really love what they did with it in the show, but I do love the Morrison take that seemed like just like so much more of like a straightforward takedown of like the Liefeld era in like 90s image.
I
like,
think that's
superhero.
That's kind of almost the craziest part is like they're very different. The show version is this sort of like lovable creep. Like he is disgusting and creepy, but he's kind of like a soft boy. But the version in the comics is almost like Punisher if his mission was only to eliminate beards.
Yes.
Right. Or American Psycho. That's the vibe I got from it too.
Yeah. It's I don't know if it's in just that issue where he first appears, or I'm not sure where it is in the comics, but I think there's a moment where he dies and goes to heaven and kind of like has a moment where he's like, God has a beard, and he's there's like a thing like that I find really, really funny, that like he can't be at rest in the afterlife because God has a beard kind of thing.
It's very funny. I will say that like I loved him on the show.
Yeah.
Like I really thought that like, especially like, because it was at the beginning, it felt like a sort of toss away character, but then especially like as the more he shows up, like the deeper it went, and I became sort of obsessed with it because I think it felt like it wasn't necessarily like the big villain, but it felt so only Doom Patrol could have this character, and that was the thing that I hooked on to.
Yeah, I like the idea that it's one step away from like a thing that another property would take very seriously. So like I'm thinking like if we were talking like Supernatural, or if we were talking Constantine or something, you'd have a character, or like even Flash, you'd have a character like Gorilla Grodd eat someone's brain and gain their knowledge or whatever. And the show and that character are just one step away from that. It's like, well, what if he ate their beard and he could find them? Like, or like think like them a bit. And there's something so funny about taking this very kind of like normal trope and then just moving it like one step over.
It's totally true. Yeah, I guess that is also like kind of what a lot of the characters are.
Yeah.
That's awesome. I love that.
I love Beard Hunter.
I'll
you know, we can't possibly know what's happening in season 4.
How could we possibly?
Impassioned plea for the return of Beard Hunter.
But that's like, I think like what you're saying about how you kind of fell in love with Beard Hunter. I feel like that's one of the things that, and I feel like I can say this because like most of the show predates my time on the show, so I can be like exultantly praiseful of the show and not sound like I'm just like patting myself on the back.
I'm like Shoshana,
a little bit, right? But like I feel like what the show does so well is it takes these things in the comics, like you said, a lot of them are one and dones, and a lot of stuff in the Morrison run are they're just throwing shit at the wall. Like there'll be like one panel of a villain that's just like you only get like a glimpse into this thing. But I feel like the show, even though it pulls a lot from the Morrison run, it's like it creates this universe where like things that get plucked from these different runs in the comic and put into this universe are just like given this life and depth that they didn't really have in the comic. So like, and this emotionality. So like who would have expected that anyone on Earth could fall in love with the character called the Beard Hunter, but like only on the show? And like credit to the actor who played him too. But just, like, there's so much like heart and emotion to the stuff they do on the show. I love it.
Because even you see him later, he's living on Danny the Street, and you're like, oh, good for him. You're like, oh, he's doing it. You feel really good for him. Yeah,
I love that. All right,
happiness.
Let's leave Facebook and head on over to Twitter.
That's Twitter.
First question comes from Hee-haw Braydon. Yes, the donkey rises, who asks, what are the origin stories of the Brain and Monsieur Mallah?
Right. So Brain, just quick refresher, is the human brain in basically a jar, a robot jar.
Where'd they get the name?
He's a brain.
Oh.
And Monsieur Mallah is a super intelligent French gorilla, and they're in love.
And Monsieur Mallah was genetically engineered by the Brain in the comics, I think, right? To be super intelligent. He was like one of the Brain's projects.
Yeah, he is a Brain project. The thing that I had to refresh a little bit is, when things have been around long enough, they tweak and retcon and things change. So like in the New 52 and probably what you'd consider to be now, I'm pretty sure it's like genetic experimentation and stuff like that done on Monsieur Mala by Brain. Brain creates him. But if I'm not mistaken, in the original kind of Silver Age stuff, it wasn't like gene splicing or anything like that. It was like conditioning.
Oh.
It was like shock therapy and stuff like that. And somehow that gave Monsieur Mala like genius level IQ or something like that. It's something like way more rudimentary, like hitting him with a ruler if he gets the question wrong until he's a genius.
I've been trying that with you. I love that Silver Age logic.
It's so silly, but yeah. So I mean, Monsieur Mala is a genius in his own right, as much as Brain is, which is kind of interesting. This Brain's origin.
If I remember correctly, there's something about the Brain's origin has something to do with Niles Caulder. And again, like I'm like not exactly sure which version is canon now, but it was like the Brain's was a scientist who was working with Niles Caulder, and there was a lab accident that destroyed his body, and then he was forced to be a brain in a jar kind of thing, and he blames Niles Caulder for his.
Yeah, and I'm not sure if they ever went and like definitively said whether or not it was Calder's fault. And maybe at a certain point it actually doesn't matter because enough other things are Calder's fault that it's like maybe it doesn't matter anymore. But yeah, it's basically just like an accident. The crazy thing with Brain is like that's such like a simple name for a villain, but if you look up Brain, if you like go to like the DC wiki or whatever, there's like 6 brains.
Yes.
Because they're also the name of like a bunch of like throwaway Golden Age characters that like, here's one issue of Superman. He's like, I'm called Brain. And you never see him again. And then there's like another guy that's like, oh, Flash, I'm Brain. You go, you never see him again.
That feels like a move that DC would eventually connect them all.
And I think that's what I was looking for. Yeah. I was like, I wonder if one of these is canonically Brain.
Yeah.
And I didn't find one.
Interesting.
Because I think Brain's name is like Ernst or something like that. Like he has kind of like a German name. And none of these other ones, some of them don't have names or whatever, but I was kind of looking for that.
Feels like a real Morrison
one of
move.
These must be Brain. And I couldn't figure it out. I don't think there is a connection, but that'd be kind of cool.
I guess it's time for Ezra Daniels to make that change.
They got to call DC Comics.
That's right.
Yeah, DC execs. We know you're listening.
Awesome. All right, let's go to the next question from Geek Top 5, who ask, kind of the obvious question, but considering the parallels between Doom Patrol and the X-Men, who came first, the Brotherhood of Evil or the Brotherhood of Evil Mutants?
Right. So I think the last time we did a Doom Patrol episode, we talked about the idea that Arnold Drake kind of had a gripe that he felt that the Doom Patrol concept was stolen. And when you look at like the first appearance dates of the Doom Patrol versus the X-Men, they're like a couple of months apart.
Oh, really?
You know, the idea of like paralyzed recluse in a manor teaches outcasts from society how to use their powers for good. Like, like all of that kind of thing. And I think we kind of, at that point, kind of were like, maybe it was, maybe it wasn't, maybe it's coincidental inspiration, maybe it's a best we don't say who stole from whom thing, like Swamp Thing and Man Thing.
Yes.
But I looked up the first appearances of these characters. Both issues come out in March 1964. It's almost like even after the books came out, they were like racing on the same idea.
Well, yeah, I mean, if they're coming out at the same time, like, how do you steal that from the other person, right? Like,
do you have like any kind of like love or experience?
Did you steal anything from somebody
for the X-Men? Yeah, tell us what you stole.
Well, my understanding of the story is that like a lot of these guys were like kind of in the same like office buildings or something, or like in the same bars. So like even though the publication dates were like staggered in a certain way, like they might have been like bouncing ideas or not bouncing ideas off each other, but just like privy to each other's ideas.
Yeah.
But the other thing about this stuff back then is like everything was ripping off something else. Like Doom Patrol is a rip off of Fantastic Four or like some other team I can't remember what the name of, but like everything was a riff on something else. So my perspective is just like it doesn't matter, and it's like it becomes part of like the whole what's the word I'm looking for? Just like the lineage of these things. Like Doom Patrol is just like a mark on a path that went to X-Men, and then the whole thing with Gerard Way creating Umbrella Academy, which like totally riffs on Doom Patrol and X-Men, and then Gerard Way ended up writing the run of Doom Patrol that like we're pulling a lot from, so it's all like self-referential and
I do think it's funny, like not just the setup, the mansion, the guy in the wheelchair, all that kind of stuff, but like down to like a few months later, they're like, we both have a brotherhood of evil, and then Marvel was like, mutants.
I do like
just put that on the
it's like at a bar.
They could have put a little more effort into it, I will say.
Like the bar downstairs, and they're just like, hey, listen, shut up. I mean, what if there was like a family, but it was only guys? Brotherhood. Let's make it brotherhood, but they're bad. And it's just like, hold on, Spider Friends, let's make it evil.
Here's the crazy thing, though. For me, like calling the team the Brotherhood of Evil feels like it fits with the Doom Patrol.
Yes.
Where a bunch of these characters are just like, of course I'm evil. I'm a brain in a jar. Like they're so like self-aware. The Brotherhood of Evil Mutants feels like Magneto knows he's evil.
Like, yeah, isn't his whole thing is that he's like
owning it.
He's a civil rights activist?
He's recruiting people. He's like, I'm right. Join the Brotherhood of Evil Mutants. And they go,
Yeah, that's not good. Yeah,
that's kind of odd to me.
That is.
I feel like
it's bad marketing.
Yeah,
but his mutant power isn't marketing. It's
that's true.
Magnetism. So let's
give
him a little space.
That's true. He's not Marketo.
That's like calling my marketing agency the buy the things you don't need company. Like,
or like the we're subconsciously convincing you to do things company. Yeah, it's like we know what we are.
We know which side of this we're on, and we choose to continue. I like it. All right. Next question comes from Rick to the E, who asks, did the brain ever have a body? Was he of any significance before becoming a brain in a jar, or did he do it himself?
Oh, did he do it himself? This is This is legitimately a bit I cannot remember.
Yeah,
maybe Ezra can. Is the experiment with Monsieur Mala done pre or post jar?
My understanding is that he became a supervillain scientist and doing things like giving Monsieur Mala superintelligence after he became a brain in a jar.
Right.
And I think, as far as I know, which I could be totally wrong because my knowledge is scant at best.
Sure.
I think that the whole backstory with the brain being a scientist working with Niles Calder was only something that was ever delivered in exposition. I don't think we ever actually saw what the brain's body looked like. It was just like, we meet the brain as a brain in a jar, and they're like, how did you get like that? He's like, well, I used to be a scientist working with Niles Calder.
Right. I mean,
maybe Niles did it.
I mean, I think that would be a very reasonable retcon if it never already got done.
Yeah.
You know, that like it's a thing that the show does really well. I love the idea that like Niles is truly a genius, a man of science, a man ahead of his time, and yet his stuff is also just a little bit shitty. Like, like the difference between Cliff and Cyborg is so like the Star Labs tech is over here, and Calder is like, no, I still made like a brain live in a robot body, but it's a piece of shit. I love the idea that before he could figure out like articulation of joints and that, he's like, it's just a jar, and he just puts the brain in the jar and goes, there you go, you're welcome.
That's a good. I love that.
It just feels like that feels like a very natural kind of retcon to me.
Totally.
Yeah, we might steal that. That's like the amazing thing about like doing the show and like looking at the podcasts and like listening to the podcasts and like watching the YouTube walkthroughs is that a lot of times you guys come up with ideas that are better than the ones that we're coming up with, and we're just like, like why did we do it that way? That's so much better.
That's hilarious. I mean,
we've already given Shoshana carte blanche to take everything.
Is there anything that's already happened on the show where you can think of like an example where you're like, shit, I wish we had done something else?
Yeah, I can think of something really specifically, and I might get in trouble by mentioning this, but I'm going to talk about it anyways. But one of the YouTube recap shows, review shows that I really got addicted to was this one called Blurs in the Hood. It's these two guys, Jay and Winston, who just like do like recaps and reviews of Doom Patrol, and they were like, and these guys are just like brilliant with like the depth that they like drill into, like what are the characters' motivations, what are the emotional underpinnings of the things they're doing, like what are you referencing in the comics, and they would like try to guess what was happening in future episodes, and like just based on the clues that we're setting, and they set up and they had this theory that I forget what episode it is, but it's like at the end of episode 2, I think, of season 3, the cliffhanger. This is spoiler alert for anybody who hasn't seen season 3 yet.
Of course.
But at the end of episode 2, it's just episode 2. The Doom Patrol is about to be destroyed by Garguax, and they almost escape this like resort, and they're shoved back into the room to face their deaths by Rita. And at the end of that episode, these guys on Blurs in the Hood were like, well, considering who's entered the picture, Madame Rouge, and what her power is, shape-shifting, that person who shoved them into the back into the room was probably Madame Rouge, shape-shifting as Rita, and that'll set some. I forget what they said was going to set up later. But also something that's like they put a hat on it at the end. I was like, oh my god, that's brilliant. And like, I don't know why we didn't do that, but like everything lined up, because like in the previous episode, Madame Rouge had showed up in a time machine, and they're like, why is Rita wearing the same outfit that Madame Rouge wore? I'm just like, obviously that's what we should have been setting up.
That's so funny. I love that.
Oh god, that's so funny. That must be kind of like a like surreal experience too. Like that's a lot different than like doing theater and then reading the reviews and people just go like, I liked it or I didn't like it, and you take that to heart or you don't. But to like go like, shit, no, damn it, that was a like like that's how we should have ended Hamlet. Like that's
very funny. I like that. All right, let's go to the next question from Lesbian of Many Names, who asks, what's the deal with the Builders? Is there a connection between the Builders and the Pentagon?
Have you taken in the Rachel Pollack run of Doom Patrol at all?
I have not yet, and the reason is because it's not in print, right? Like it was just re-released.
That's right. It hadn't been collected and released. It's only kind of like, I've only read it on Comixology. Like I've never even seen like an issue in the wild or anything like that before. But there's an arc in the Pollock run called the Tiresias Wars, and Rachel Pollack introduced, like, I mean, I can't say this definitively because I don't know everything, but what I would imagine to be one of the earliest transgender characters in comics.
Wow.
Her name's awesome. Kate Godwin, aka Coagula. She has the power to dissolve solids or to coagulate liquids. That's her superpower. And she's a trans woman who had been a sex worker and tries to try out for the Justice League. And she says, like, I think I was too much woman for them or whatever. Then ends up on the Doom Patrol. And she's an interesting character because she has that very, like, I want to be a superhero view. And then she shows up to this house and everyone there is like, why would you want to be that? Like, they're very, like, hipster about superheroes with her. But then there's this arc called the Tiresias Wars, and essentially this race called the Builders show up, and they're all about rigidity and order, and they're going to basically tear the world down because it is too chaotic. And then there's this, like, I can't remember what they're called, but there's the kind of fluid ones or whatever. And the person that saves the day is Kate, who becomes the living embodiment of navigating both worlds, of changing your physical form to match who you've always been inside. So that she's kind of both fluidity and stability in one. Like, her trans identity becomes the thing that saves the world.
That's incredible.
I mean, I read that and I was like, oh my God, this is beautiful. But like, I'm not trans, and like,
sure,
I don't have a perspective on it. I'm sure it's not necessarily like the best, But I really like that. It's a Doom Patrol story that always stands out for me. But in that, yeah, the Builders have like a secret long kind of tryst with the Pentagon. They've got like a secret base under the Pentagon. Because if you think of like what would be a great like human partnership for order and rigidity, it's the military. So
Sure, yeah.
So yeah, the Builders have a connection to the Pentagon.
Wow. That's cool as hell.
But yeah, I would check out the Tiresias Wars. I can't remember the exact issue numbers, but it's like Doom Patrol 70, like 4 to 78 or something like that. It's on Comixology. It's worth reading. If only because it's a really cool, like, Coagula centered story, which is really neat. She only shows up like 2 or 3 issues before that. Like, she's pretty new on the team.
Wow. That sounds cool as hell. All right. Well, with that, let's leave Twitter and head on over to Reddit,
where everyone's nice and no one's ever mean.
Not once. Everybody's really nice on Reddit. First question comes from Tone DX 2049. Rolls off the tongue. Who asks, who has been your favorite villain on the show so far? And how do you think they compare to their comic book counterpart?
I definitely want to hear.
Ooh, yeah.
I definitely want to hear Ezra's pick first.
I think you should go first because I want to think about this.
Ooh,
okay.
Shit.
I can think about it. I want you to go first so I can copy your answer.
My favorite on the show so far. I mean, performance-wise, I really liked Mr. Nobody, but
well, I mean, yeah.
But I think I'm actually going to say Red Jack. I really liked the version of Red Jack we got on the show. I actually, in many ways, think that episode gives Red Jack a little bit more to work with than the comic does. Or it's a little more tangible to me, at least, like the connection to pain and how that kind of feeds Red Jack. The design was incredible, too. Like, that was a real moment of like, holy shit, this thing came to life, you know? In the way that, like, we hear lots of people just only slightly older than us talk about like going to see the Michael Keaton Batman movie and being like, oh my God, that's fucking Batman. Like having that kind of experience. Not that I was like a huge like Red Jack stan or something from the comics, but just seeing it, I was like, holy shit, I can't believe they pulled off a thing I could only envision as illustration. Like, that one really did it for me. Plus all the production design that accompanied it, like the design of the butterflies, the effects that were part of that, the setting of the table, the tone of voice, like all of those things that you don't get to play with in the medium of comics really like brought the comics to TV. And I think that's probably the one that I was like, holy shit, I can't believe they nailed that. Yeah.
I think for me, it's probably going to be Candlemaker.
Sure. Yeah.
That like the I think one of the best things about the show is like the interpretation of trauma into like storytelling, right?
Sure,
like
yeah.
I think that like that's always sort of at the like the sort of broad strokes of what the show's doing, right? And to have something that's like literally the physical embodiment of somebody's trauma like turned into a monster. So it's like the thing that you like whenever you go through a bad time, it's like the thing that you want to be able to lash out, or like the 2020 vision of before, right? Like being able to go like, oh, if I had been able to, this is what I would have done. To have something like, it's like, okay, I will step in and take over for you. Mm-hmm. And then to have something then be so terrifying and build up for so long that when you finally get it, it's like, oh shit, this is actually scarier somehow.
Yeah.
And then to go inside of Crazy Jane's brain and like,
I was just going to say that scene in that episode where Candlemaker invades the underground
it's legitimate,
and kills
like,
a couple
terrifying.
of the personalities. I was like, oh no.
Yeah. Like, and then to have the sort of like, to not actually have to show that much either.
Yeah.
Like, I think, it's.
I like to, I mean, this, just to riff on that a bit.
Yeah.
I liked that in the finale that season, when the Candlemaker shows up and you're like, fuck. I love the imagery of like being contained in wax.
Yeah.
Like you're trapped by this thing now.
Yeah.
And I really like the metaphor of that.
Mm-hmm.
But I also love that Candlemaker is like maybe the most terrifying kind of monster on screen.
Yes.
But most of that episode is like the silly imaginary friend fights, like Cliff fighting Jesus and Jesus being like,
God.
"Time's up, motherfucker!"
Yeah.
Like that kind of shit is so funny to me. And then you like pan over here terrifying candle
actually
monster.
terrifying. Yeah,
Yeah.
incredible.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's definitely my favorite.
All right.
Those
Ezra.
were-
We've
right.
camped as long as we can.
Those were fantastic answers, I have to say. And I think, like, again, like coming from like a visual arts background, Candlemaker and Red Jacket both were just like among my favorites, just purely because of the way they look. And like you were saying, like the Red Jacket episode was like felt like a Tarsem Singh movie. It felt like The Cell or The Fall. Like it was
Yes.
so
Oh
like,
man, totally like The
so
Fall.
Yeah.
Oh shit. Yeah. Yeah.
yeah. So that was a favorite. I like. Well, I love those two, but I feel like I like a lot of the characters that are like not really villains. Like Dr. Harrison, I think is a really fun,
Mhm.
Yeah.
like kind of almost villain, because I feel like those are characters that like mess with our protagonists in a way that's like really terrifying. And I think that's one of the reasons I like the Candlemaker too, is because he's an extension of Dorothy's imagination.
Yeah.
Like there's a connection to one of the characters that's just like a little bit scarier because it's so emotional and so deep versus somebody even like Mr. Nobody, who's terrifying in his power set, but like his connection to the characters doesn't run as deep as like something that's a manifestation of someone's own psyche.
Totally.
So I think, and even characters like Cliff's dad, I feel like is one of those characters that like every time he comes around, I'm just like, he's gonna say something that's gonna mess up someone's entire life.
Yeah.
So that's really fun. But then, like, in terms of just like the superhero villain sets, I mean, I'm partial because I was in the room this season that we did Sisterhood of Dada, but like, there's so many of those characters that I feel like they were really fun to play with. And I really wish we would have had more time to delve into their powers more. Like, I feel like the quiz alone could be like an entire 100%. Show could be based around trying to figure out how to fight the quiz.
Totally, yeah. I mean, I've got to say, actually, from a design perspective, I really love what the show did with Frenzy. To have the bicycle mounted.
Oh, yeah.
You know, like that, because that's such like it's such a Dada look, but it's very kind of like a simplified version. Like Frenzy in the comics has a lot more going on, like visually. But I really liked like distilling that, where it's just like, it's almost like taking like, what would you, if you opened a text, like an encyclopedia to the word Dada, you'd see like an object out of place, you know, like a toilet on top of a car, or like what you'd see like some shit like that. And then to make that like part of Frenzy and then tied to the power, because if I'm not mistaken, Frenzy's power is not just wind manipulation. It's not like he's not like an air elemental. He's like a chaos vortex that kind of manifests as wind, but I'm pretty sure in the comics, like his power is chaos. In a
That's
sense.
awesome.
So I kind of love, I don't know, I love the visual of the bike and all that kind of shit. I just thought it looked really good.
Yeah. I mean, the visuals of the show purely are one of the best parts about it. It's one of the best looking of, I think, of especially all of those, like the DC Universe shows. Like,
yeah, I agree.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah. And I think like, just like from a production standpoint, I feel like a big reason why I love the way Doom Patrol looks is because the tone is so absurd that like even when an effect doesn't look completely convincing, it feels like it's of the universe. Whereas something that's more like Watchmen or something, like if there's like a wonky, like if the butts showed up in Watchmen, you'd be like, wait, that doesn't work at all. But in Doom Patrol, it's just like, all right, we're going
Gives
there.
you a bit of
I released the butts 35 minutes ago.
Jesus Christ. It gives you a bit of carte blanche to there's like a Doctor Who of it all, I think, which I kind of
I mean, that's the crazy balancing act of like the first episode.
Yeah.
Is that like that first episode is like pretty straight laced.
Yeah.
But if I'm not mistaken, ends with the donkey butt. Like, so like you go through this episode that's like mostly Cliff trauma and shit like that, and then it just ends with a portal in a donkey's ass, and you're like, oh fuck, like
Doom Patrol. Yeah. Love it. All right. Next question comes from Fat Moss, who asks, I was curious how the brain actually builds his tech. A lot of brain questions here. I like it. And
people
contraptions. Is Mala just that good at following the brain's blueprints to the letter?
I mean, I would argue that Mala doesn't have to follow them to the letter because Mala is a genius in his own right. Like, imagine you're a genius and you say, I've designed something, and then the genius next to you goes, I'll build it.
Yeah.
Like, you don't need to hold their hand through it. I mean, they're in love, so they
would
might hold
Yeah,
hands,
yeah.
but there's versions of the brain, like in Young Justice or something like that, or in the comics, where like the canister that the brain is in, the jar that the brain is in, is home to like all sorts of like R2D2 arms and screws and contraptions and weapons and shit like that. Like very much, very much in the way that like an R2 droid kind of looks to me. Like a flap opens and a thing comes out, and it's always like
Yeah.
like he's more functional than a Dalek, but less functional than like a humanoid robot body. Is like he's somewhere in there, right? Like,
Yeah, totally.
I kind of like that too. I mean, just as someone who sometimes has to think of these things, what would you personally think is like the reason the brain never permanently makes a better body?
I think from a character standpoint, he thinks that manual labor is beneath him.
Right.
I think that's because he's got this superiority complex, and I feel like that's a big part of the tension between him and Monsieur Malad, who feel like he's always being made to be subservient when he doesn't deserve to be, because like you said, he's a genius in his own right. Yeah. So I feel like the brain certainly could make himself a robot body to do the stuff that he wants to do, but he just doesn't want to.
Well, especially if you consider that, like, if he thinks that like the best part of him is the brain,
then what does it matter?
Yeah. Why add other things to it if it's just like creating more of a barrier between the brain and the
right?
rest
Like
of
he's more his pure self or something. Like everything else just slows him down.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I mean that's.
I don't know about you guys, but I it's not infrequent that I wish I was a brain in a jar. Like say like you eat bad burrito and you get diarrhea, you're just like, why can't I just be a brain in a jar? Like there's so many things that the human body does that you're just like, I'm over this. Why can't I just be a brain in a jar?
I mean, not to say that the brain's design is particularly good, like from a in-universe practical standpoint. Sure. But there is something to be said for a prosthetic essentially that is not humanoid. Like so much of sci-fi and everything is like the Terminators, they look like humans, and it's like,
why?
But only some of them have to infiltrate. Like that's the point of them. But how come the rest of them still are walking and shit like that? You don't need to do that. That's actually a liability. Like
it's totally
that like the AT-ATs in Star Wars, like that's a massive liability. Just put treads on them.
You already have spaceships. Make it fly.
Make it fly. Yeah, exactly. So there's something kind of
I have a specific theory about that has nothing to do with like what we're supposed to be talking about.
Okay,
I feel like a lot of that goes back to the budget limitations of the original Star Trek, because Star Trek TOS like set the visual template for so much of science fiction and pop culture filmed.
Right.
But because they didn't have the budget to create aliens that had like any difference from a human other than like a ridge on their head or ears or whatever, it kind of became like kind of gave future science fiction a license to just be like, to let the viewers use their imagination to fill in the blanks on what this alien could look like.
Yeah.
But I feel like as a result, like future science fiction was just like, all right, an alien could just be like a man with 6 fingers, and we're just going to run with that. And I feel like it kind of limited the imagination of things for a long time.
Mm-hmm. Like that's a thing that I think about a lot. Like even the difference between a movie like Alien and a movie like The Thing. To me, The Thing is like so much more interesting because like that is fully alien. Like it has a shape changing thing, but it's also like you see that Wilfred Brimley like monster or whatever. Like it's fully inhuman. Whereas Alien, even though it's got more legs and more arms, it still has like there's its mouth, there's its hands, there's its legs. Even in space, it has like a tail for counterbalance or whatever. Like there's, to me, The Thing is like more of like, if we encounter aliens, they're going to fuck us up in the head because we'll be like,
It's a thing that I usually, when I try to justify to myself, it's sort of the idea that it's like, well, maybe this is just the like science, like nature as like a property is just like, this is the sort of the best Like
Right.
humanoid is the like thing that things need to evolve to so that they can then do other crazy
Typical human perspective.
Yeah, totally. Human-centric perspective.
I just think
Star Trek: The Next Generation actually tried to like retcon that reasoning in, right? Because there was like this whole storyline how there was like these architects of the universe that like seeded their DNA on. It's just like Prometheus.
Yeah,
they try to do the same thing where there's like the reason that everything is bipedal and humanoid is because there was like one genetic architect.
Yeah. I just think that there should be one shape of all species. What?
I can't believe you like Doom Patrol. Yeah. You seem like the complete wrong audience.
Look, I just have a few different perspectives. I think that I've got a presentation I'd like to show you. All right, let's move on, which means we are leaving Reddit and heading over to our final location, the Doc Scored. The Doc Scored.
Docs like us, baby, we were born to score.
Ooh, I like it.
Can't believe I thought of a new song.
I'm impressed. That's good.
I'm running out of classic rock songs.
I mean, the classic rock thing has been dropped like months ago.
I've just been doing other songs.
All right. On the Doc Score, the first question comes from Yo Crow, it's Scarebro, who asks, which version of the Doom Patrol do you prefer in comics? I'm a fan of the Young Animal Gerard Way version. Well,
what do you have a preference? You said like right off the top, you're
Morrison.
Maybe not that you enjoy them more, but you said you're kind of partial to the Silver Age ones, and I feel like that's the opinion I hear the least.
I guess I'm a contrarian. I'm going to have to go with Silver Age, if only because of the aesthetics. I'm just so in love with the way those comics look.
I totally get it. It's the same reason why I keep going back to like the Kirby Fourth World stuff. Like it may not be the best written, especially when you're like when you're looking at like Mr. Miracle and stuff like that. But I love Kirby's like space. I love Kirby space so much.
Yeah, I mean, especially when you get to some of those pages. Sometimes I find Kirby's art overwhelming. Mm-hmm. There's so much on the page, and between the Kirby crackle and like all of the geometric kind of shit he's doing, and then you kind of look at it and you're like, oh fuck. But yeah, there's something kind of
like his full page work. I'm super. I love that sort of era, anyways. But like especially sci-fi in that era. But Kirby is just so synonymous, right? Like I love that.
The way stuff works really well because it's super postmodern in a super postmodern world. Yeah. Like, what's interesting about the way stuff is that you could feel it. It's extremely clever and very well executed and very kind of like fourth wall breaky, and we're talking about reality and stuff like that. And yet it feels like it fits more than the Morrison era stuff does. Like the Morrison era feels like it's out of time. Like who the fuck came up with this?
Yeah.
Whereas the way stuff is like, yeah, it's not mainstream, but it's more timely. Like more people, I think, look for stories that way. And maybe it's just because simply it comes after a bunch of Morrison stuff and a bunch of Gaiman stuff and things that have kind of like expanded what we look for in a story or whatever. Maybe it's just because of that.
It's more accessible.
Yeah, the way stuff feels both like it's totally the spiritual successor to those things and also like less cutting edge, I guess is what where I'm going with that.
You know what it makes me think of is the Old Testament versus the New Testament. Like the Old Testament, the Bible is just like, there's like no story arcs, like stories will just end. You're like, I don't know what's going on. There'll be like whole like 100 pages just like listing kin of kin of kin of kin.
Right.
But then the New Testament, it's like started to get a little bit of an understanding of like story structure and like characters have arcs and characters have motivations and stuff, but it's still like of the same continuity.
Yeah, right. That's pretty interesting, actually. In a way too. I mean, that is kind of how comics are. Comics and the Bible kind of like have the same continuity issues, which is that it's like the Bible's like publishing schedule is like crazy slow, but there's like it's like serialized storytelling. Different people wrote different parts. It's all supposed to take place in the same thing. Not everyone has read all the stuff that came before, so there's like retcons that need to be made. And it's like there are weird similarities I hadn't really thought of before now.
Really, I mean, this is where the conversation went. I'm so sorry.
No, that's great. I think I'll just end by saying, like, when someone says Doom Patrol, the first thing I always think of is the Tiresias Wars. I think of that Rachel Pollack run. I would never go on record, I think, saying it's like the most inventive or even like the most daring or even the best, but it's the one I think of. It's the one that kind of got to me first and struck me first. And so I kind of always have a soft spot for, it's a relatively short run too, but I have a soft spot for that era.
You know what the real problem with the Old Testament is? It's like there's no save the cat. Like where's that moment, right?
It's right
Who's
before
giving notes.
Yeah, exactly.
It's right before you rip your baby in half.
Yeah. That's awesome. Yeah, I think Way's my sort of version. I think that, I mean, who knew the guy that would like get me to paint my nails and like feel my feelings could also be somebody that would write good comics. But I think I just connect. Maybe that's just because it's the way I got in. But
I think we talked about it the last time we did a Doom Patrol ep, but there's a concept that I love in that run, which is that Casey Brink, who is a fictional character created by Danny that comes to life, falls in love with Nada, who is Mr. Nobody's daughter.
Yeah.
And they have a child together. But because both of them are technically non-existent, the child is just a blank space on the comic page. Like the child is the void. And then
would you say it's Nada?
Well, no, Nada's the mom, but like it's less than Nada somehow. It's like possibility. And then this company, this extra dimensional company called Retcon, takes that baby and turns it into Milkman Man and tries to sanitize the universe for sale. It's like such a wild, like between Gerard Way and that's also Steve Orlando, right? Because that's Milk Wars and stuff.
Past and future guest.
Between those two elements, that's a concept I just love. It's like, what if two nothings have a something? What's the math of that?
I mean, that's actually math. That's like two, that's two negatives making a positive, which is like, that's a real.
It's pretty wild. I love that.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Fuck yeah. All right. Next question from Dick Can't Read, who asks, was Morrison's run the first time the Doom Patrol got weird? Villains like Mr. Nobody? Their older stuff seems more in line with sci-fi pulp stuff of the day, but nothing too weird.
Right. I mean, you've probably read more of the Silver Age stuff than I have. So as a compare and contrast, like where do you see the line between that kind of first couple of iterations of the Doom Patrol and then where it goes Morrison and post?
Mm-hmm. I think, like listening to you guys talk about your favorite runs made me think a lot about the fact that like the Morrison post stuff was so intentionally weird and sometimes like conspicuously weird.
Yeah.
Where I feel like maybe one of the reasons I like the older stuff is that it was weird just by virtue of it being created by a bunch of dudes who are working for pennies under duress.
Right.
And so like this is just like it wasn't intended to be weird, but it just like it's just weird naturally. Like it's like more of an organic weird. So I feel like that stuff is, I don't think it was necessarily seen as particularly, it was like a little bit weirder than the stuff that was being made contemporaneously. Is that a word?
Right. Yes.
Contemporarily.
Yeah.
Okay. Something like that. But
I'll take both.
But looking back on that stuff now, it's super weird. Just like, comparing it to like the standard mainstream comics of today, it's incredibly weird.
I think, I think it was the Doom Patrol always lived in like the world of strange, right? Like I think they even had like the world's strangest heroes thing, the way that the X-Men did to like another thing that they were fucking ripping off each other. But like, Animal, Vegetable, Mineral Man is both a weird power and a weird design. Like he was always strange and bizarre, and the whole idea was that they were kind of freakish and outcasts, right? Like it wasn't just I'm strong, I have a ring that can do anything, I'm fast. It was always like, they were on the fringe. So I think the villains like reflected that too. but you look at the villains from that era, and they're still mostly straightforward, if not strange. We got a brain in a jar, mad scientist. We have a super intelligent ape with a Gatling gun or whatever. We've got General Immortus. He lives forever. We've got animal, vegetable, mineral man. He's got crazy shapeshift, basically. They're still relatively within the bounds of superhero comics, just slightly stranger. When we get to like Morrison and later, then they were like, what if nothing we do is real? And they start literally like peeling back the panels of the comic and start like, what is nothing that, think about like the painting that ate Paris and all that kind of shit. Like the idea of these, we're introducing Dada. We're introducing like a literal form of chaos to art. To an art form that is historically so ordered, very sequential. They come out every month. You have panels. There are gutters between the panels. Yeah. Someone writes it. You draw it. I mean, that's a lot different. The relationship between creators is a lot different now. But you know what I mean? Like they're almost introducing, in terms of form, literal chaos into order.
Totally.
And I think the villains reflect that too. The Decreator and Mr. Nobody and the Quiz, a character who can use any power you haven't identified. Like as soon as you identify it, they can't use it. And then they go to fight someone else and they can use the power again until that person identifies it. Like all of these things are just like tearing down all of the structure, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, it's interesting that you brought up that character because the next question comes from Fart Butt, who asks, what are some notable powers the Quiz has used?
Ooh.
If you had to give her a weird power for a single use, what would it be?
Interesting. So yeah, like I said, the Quiz can use basically any power that has not been identified, essentially. If someone says speed or whatever, then you're like, shit, I can't use speed.
So you're saying that they can use something unless you figure out what that is,
basically. I can't remember if you have to say it out loud or not, or something like that, but it's
better if you don't overthink it. We spend so much time in the room trying to figure out the rules of the Quiz.
Yeah, sure. I mean, from that perspective, like, how do you navigate some of that? Because some things work really well in a comic medium, and like, how do you translate some of that stuff? Like, what was your approach to the Quiz?
Well, and specifically, it's Grant Morrison's writing style, where, like I said, they're throwing stuff at the wall constantly, and it moves on too fast for you to think about it too much. Even the stuff that featured the Quiz and in Grant Morrison's run was like, you really weren't given time to linger on like, oh, how do these rules actually work? Right. But like me, I'm an OG sci-fi nerd, so I'm thinking like, well, if the Quiz, like you mentioned, super speed, like what if the Quiz has the power to like run at Mach 5?
Right.
And then someone thinks of that like, oh, she's running at Mach 5. That's her power. She's like, well, you haven't thought of the power of running at Mach 5.1. So then it becomes this like literally like the power becomes like the limitations of the power becomes nullified if you're going to get too granular, too specific with how you handle it. So it's just like one of those things you have to zoom on by. Unless you
can be non-specific about it, but like their power is to run fast, and it's like, well, that captures.
But that also that's totally encapsulates like Morrison's philosophy on comics. I mean, I'm sure everyone's seen it circulated online, that quote of Morrison's where he essentially says like, kids don't give a shit about who pumps the tires in the Batmobile, but now you have all these adults that are like, who pumps the tires? Nobody fucking pumps the tires. It's a comic book. Like, that's Morrison's perspective. So it's totally unsurprising. They'd be like, they wouldn't worry about that shit. You know what I mean? Like, it's a comic book. It doesn't matter.
Yes.
What is a power you would want to see the Quiz?
Because it's got to be like obscure enough in a way that like it'll take somebody some time to figure it out.
Yeah, if you're thinking like the Quiz, you don't just want to use a power that's instantly identifiable. So what is a power you could use that would take someone a bit to figure out?
Yeah, I want to be able to have the ability to control how light shines in someone's eyes. Just like no matter where they are, they're just like, Jesus. It's like when you're like sitting around a campfire and you're like, God, the smoke's always coming at me. That would be another really good one.
The power to always.
Oh no, I changed my mind. I changed my mind. That's what it is.
The power to control what side the smoke is going to.
That's it.
Campfire.
That's the one. I changed my mind. That's what it is.
But it's not the power to control wind.
No.
The power to control, or the power to
campfire
control smoke or fire.
Yeah,
it's just the
campfire smoke. Yeah, that's it. That's
a very Grant Morrison answer.
Yeah, I like that. I think I'd maybe give the quiz the power to like increase or decrease the friction of any two objects, like between any two objects.
You could never make that campfire.
Yeah, or you'd make it too well.
Oh no.
But like any two objects, they can either increase or decrease the friction between.
So like what's the scenario?
Like someone goes to check, like, oh, I got a text, and then you like increase the friction of their phone and the chair. They're like, they can't like like try to pull two phone books apart. You can't do it. Like
that's nice. I like that. Ezra,
I can't top those answers. Those answers were both. I'm not going to make a fool of myself by trying to top those. Those are both. I feel like you guys thought about those answers for a while.
I wish we had.
Good.
You know, it feels like at some point we must have had like a thought exercise of trying to come up with crazy powers.
No, we're just really good. Oh yeah. Maybe we spent like years just only doing a game where we came
only
up with
the
weird
retcons
powers.
can tell.
Yeah, no. We're also just professionally good at being stupid on mic.
Yeah, I mean we're just good at being dumb.
All right, let's go to the next question from We've Only Just Dan done, who asks, who is the Doom Patrol's most dangerous villain? Are there Doom Patrol? Is Doom Patrol the only ones that? Oh, okay. Are the Doom Patrol the only ones that can handle them? Okay.
Oh, okay. In your estimations, who's the most dangerous villain of the Doom Patrol? Not necessarily weirdest or silliest, but the one that's like an actual threat, the biggest actual threat.
The Doom Patrol themselves.
I'm a monster.
That's a good question. I mean, because Candlemaker's fucking terrifying, but they dispatch him fairly simply.
Yeah,
Mr. Nobody is fucking crazy.
It's funny. I'm a little torn.
Okay.
I'm torn between, is it a character with a really like insane higher plane of existence kind of power like Mr. Nobody, where it's like, how do you even deal with that? Or is it a character who's just relentlessly bad, like Brain?
Yeah.
Like literally makes a team and calls himself evil.
Yeah.
Like which is the bigger danger? And I'm a little torn between those ideas, I think.
I would posit a third pillar, which I was leaning toward, which is a villain who is completely unpredictable and can't be reasoned with.
Right.
And that's why I feel like theoretically the Sisterhood of Dada is the most dangerous villain the Doom Patrol have ever faced. I think it's like they only happened to do a project that was relatively harmless, but like if they had decided that like they wanted to make the world disappear, they could have easily done that.
Right.
Totally.
Yeah,
and there would be no reasoning with it because the whole point of what they're doing is to upset, is just to create something random.
Yeah, totally. Right at the heart of Dada, right? Is like there can't be too defined a direction for it ultimately, right? It's I mean that's interesting too. Yeah, right. I mean it's minus the maliciousness, it's minus the evil, but that's almost Joker territory.
Yeah.
We're talking about just chaos, essentially.
Unity's even more chaotic though, is lore. You got data.
Oh, I see.
This is lore.
Very good. Who do you think is the most dangerous Doom Patrol villain?
I mean, it's somebody who's not a villain. It's like, I think Crazy Jane.
Right.
This is the potential to be the most like terrifying character. It just happens to be fighting for good, but I think like that's a switch.
A huge suite of powers and the potential to lose control over like a singular direction.
Because here's the thing: any villain that exists is one that we've probably beaten, right? Like there is a beginning and an end. But the most scariest villain is the one that is in like theory.
I get what you're saying. I like the idea of like. I mean, maybe the other thing too is like the level of danger doesn't necessarily equate to how hard they are to deal with. But like you think of something like the Decreator, like that is a being that is going to unmake everything. It just so happens that their genesis is the power of belief. So it's very easy to fight them by believing hard enough in the opposite.
Is that just Santa Claus? What?
I mean, yeah, I guess if you believed hard enough in Krampus to kill Santa.
Yes.
I think it's more like the power of flight. The idea that planes only stay in the air because of the collective belief that the passengers think a plane can fly.
Right. Yeah.
Ever heard that theory?
That's awful.
It's almost like the Hitchhiker's Guide thing, right? Where it's like, how do you fly? You throw yourself on the ground and miss.
It's a tulpa.
Like that's the
it's a tulpa. It's
a tulpa. Exactly. That's precisely it. So like, I think the danger of a creature like the Decreator is huge, but it just so happens to be very easily countered.
If the scariest thing is the thing that we can create, if the thing that can uncreate things is probably terrifying.
Yeah.
Fuck, man.
I like that question.
I need to do more drugs. All right. Final question for today comes from Crimson Raven, who asks, Do the Tomb Patrol? What the fuck is wrong?
Wow, Tomb Patrol.
Oh, yeah.
We're a bunch of archaeologists, baby.
do the Doom... I just have to say really quickly, I had a meeting the other day with a woman, and she asked me what I was working on. I was like, I'm working on the show called Doom Patrol. And she was like, Poon Patrol! She was so...
How is that not an episode yet? I mean, Rule 34, right? I mean, that does exist, but
wild.
She was so offended.
God, I think I have some t-shirts I need to make.
I just fully lost my sense of sight there for like a minute.
Did you almost pass out?
I did. I laughed so hard. I like kind of half passed out there.
Oh, so close.
Yeah, it was wild. I've never done that with a guest before.
Yeah, good thing that's never happened on this show before.
Man.
That's a great superpower. From over laughter.
I mean, God, that explains so much. My body just can't handle happiness. It's like, nope, shut it down.
No, stop the presses. This won't go. That's very funny. Crimson Raisin. Jesus Christ. Crimson Raisin?
A Crazen.
Oh, it was the best part of the California Raisins. It was the secret one behind the scenes. Crimson Raisin. Crimson Raven asks, do the Doom Patrol's villains ever go up against other heroes or work with other non-Doom Patrol focused villains? So like, are they going against your Jokers and your stuff? I mean, this is a conversation that we had, I think, a while back, which is I still posit that a really great addition to the Doom Patrol would be Mr. Freeze.
Yeah, I actually really love that idea.
I think like you get rid of Niles Calder, bring in Mr. Freeze, and you have like a perfect.
Yeah, and then you're kind of like man and monster, and you're like, I thought I was doing it all for my wife, but she came back to life. She doesn't really want me.
God, he would be so
kind of like.
But I mean, we've got cyborgs in there. Like we've got
on the show,
a non-Doom Patrol character that came in.
In the comics, you get the actually, in the shows too, you get the opposite, which is Beast Boy originates on the Doom Patrol and then moves to the Titans.
That's right.
Like Beast Boy's first appearances in Doom Patrol.
Yes.
And then moves over.
But what about villains?
Brain and Monsieur Mala are, I mean, not infrequent Teen Titans villains, because there is some crossover there, not just with Beast Boy, but with them. On Young Justice, they're part of the Light, which is like that show's version of like the Legion of Doom.
Sure.
Don't know if either of you have ever encountered this comic, but there was a thing leading up to Final Crisis called Salvation Run. And basically, Amanda Waller uses the Suicide Squad to capture every villain and teleport them to an alien planet that basically becomes Australia. They just like dump the villains there.
The penal colony?
Essentially.
Wow.
And Brain and Monsieur Mala and some other characters find themselves there. I think Gorilla Grodd kills Mala with Brain, like smashes them together. And then they have this weird moment where it's like, at least we die together.
Oh, no.
It's pretty fucked up. There's that. General Immortus is like in Final Crisis. He's like giving powers to like bullshit villains like Human Flame and Condiment King and things like that.
Madame Rouge shows up in a lot of stuff, I think. But yeah, I was going to say General Immortus shows up in other stuff.
Yeah, Madame Rouge definitely shows up. Animal Vegetable Mineral Man shows up in that Jeff Lemire Animal Man run, Jeff Lemire Travel Foreman Animal Man run in the New 52. The AVM Man is in that.
And lest we forget, not only did Beast Boy start in Doom Patrol, but the TV Doom Patrol had their debut in the Teen Titans TV show.
Yes, exactly.
That's right. Yeah,
that's right. I just want to throw this out there because I have no other venue to talk about this kind of thing. I've caught up finally on Young Justice. It had taken a while, and I finally kind of caught up. And there's an episode, I think, in season 3, and it's very Beast Boy centric. And he kind of goes into this like kind of dream state, and he dreams a show called Doom Patrol Go that's done in the style of Teen Titans.
God!
It's done in the style of Teen Titans Go,
What?
but it's just the Doom Patrol. They go on a mission, they all die.
Oh my God. Rogue One for Doom Patrol?
Basically.
Oh my
it's like
God, I love that.
DOOMPATROL.
Oh my God.
Like, just kind of, it's very cute. I really enjoy that.
That's incredible.
A lot. Yeah. God, who else? Who we talked about? We talked about AVM Man, Brain, Mala, General Immortus. I don't know if like I don't think Mr. Nobody's like fought Superman. Like, although in the Painting That Ate Paris, the Doom Patrol show up to save the day, and who's already there but the JLI, like Guy Gardner and Beetle and Booster and them. And they're like, oh my God, like what is happening? And the Doom Patrol show up, just like step into the painting, and they go like, I hate those guys. Like, I love the idea that as much as the Doom Patrol has kind of like a superheroes, capes and tights kind of thing, that superheroes are like, weird reality crap. God damn it. Like, I kind of love that.
That's awesome. I'd like that too. Well, that is the last question.
Holy shit.
But we are not done yet, because it's time to play everybody's favorite game. Can you guess the name of the character based on how someone who does not read comic books can describe that character to us? That very simple title really means that I send a photo of a DC character to my wife who does not read comic books, nor does she care for them. She sends back 4 clues describing what she sees. The doctor and our guest do not know who that character is, and they try to guess who we're talking about.
You can guess as many times as you like. Okay. There are no right or wrong.
I mean, there are wrong answers.
To guess. I almost said there are no right or wrong answers, but there's no right or wrong.
There's definitively wrong and right answers. Yeah.
Right.
Are you ready to play?
I mean, as much as I ever am.
I don't know what that means, but sure. First clue. Dirt stash.
Dirt stash. A character with a dirt stash?
Yes. She's going real broad on this one.
And again, just to be clear, this isn't necessarily a Doom Patrol character.
It's definitively not.
We're just talking comics.
Yes.
Like DC Comics.
It's DC Comics. Yeah, at least. That would be really mean.
That'd be crazy if it was just any comic. Yeah.
Yeah, it's Lumberjane's crazy villain.
Dirt stash. Do you have any guesses?
This could just be like an era for a number of characters. Like Superman had a dirt stash at one point.
I will say it's of that era.
Okay. Sinestro?
No. Good call, though.
Yeah.
Good call.
Let's get another clue in there.
Okay, sure. Next clue. Plastic bag belt. Yeah?
I feel like I have a guess.
Really? Okay.
Is it 6-pack?
No, it's not.
Fuck.
It's actually twofer, bro. No.
Fuck. I was really hoping those. Any guesses, Ezra? Do you want
I
another
have
clue?
no idea.
This is a tough one so far. These clues aren't getting me there yet.
All right. Let's go to the third clue, which
Okay.
is only like 4 very specific colors.
4 very specific colors
Yes.
is the clue.
Yes. She went hard on this one. I didn't expect it, but
Dirt Stash,
yeah.
4 very specific colors.
Yes.
Ultra Comics.
No. That'd be good though, yeah.
Because he kind of had that CMYK thing.
Yeah. Fuck.
Yeah.
Hmm.
The more I think about that book, the more I like it. It frustrates me.
Yeah, that's a good book.
God damn it. Do you need the final clue?
I definitely do. I don't know about Ezra. I've never felt further from it.
Okay. The final clue is Pentagon person.
Pentagon person?
Yes. So we've got a dirt stash. We've got a belt that looks like a plastic bag. We've got 4 very specific colors, and it's a Pentagon person.
I don't understand some of these. Wild Dog.
No.
No.
I mean, how obscure is this character? Is this like D-list?
Yes.
Oh, God.
I can tell you that this character is created by Jack Kirby
Okay.
and is a Boy Commandos villain.
Oh, Jesus Christ. A Boy Commandos villain? Good Lord.
I
later,
have
but
no idea. I
to
feel
be
like
fair-
you could show me a picture and I wouldn't know. who it is.
Yeah.
Become. I mean, we'll test that. But they later became a part of Batman's Rogues Gallery.
Okay. A bag belt, 4 colors.
It feels very much like a Doom Patrol villain to
A bag belt, 4 colors.
Yes.
Sorry, the other clues again?
Pentagon person and a dirt stash.
And all those clues are applicable to this character as a Batman villain, or just in the original state of the character?
Both. To be fair.
Okay, it's a consistent character design.
Yes.
through
Yes.
history. Okay.
Yeah. There's some slight variations, but the basic idea is there.
Jesus, I don't know. Killer Moth?
No.
No, that's not a Boy Commandos villain. Idiot. Stupid. I have no clue.
Okay, I'm gonna
I'm
try.
sorry,
I'm gonna show the character to Ezra first,
Please.
just to have done it.
Yep.
And then we'll see.
Yeah, please.
Can't look.
I won't look.
Oh, I don't know what this character's name is, but I do recognize the costume.
Okay. Are you ready to see?
Sure, yeah.
Okay.
Oh, motherfucker, it's Crazy Quilt.
That's
Son
right.
of a bitch. Damn it. That, you know what? The clues actually make a lot of sense.
That's right. This is the textile art of Crazy Quilt has been the inspiration of several villains. The first Crazy Quilt of Earth 2 was created by Jack Kirby as a Boy Commandos villain, debuting
See, I'd never realized
1946.
Wow.
The Crazy
That's a very
Quilt.
Doom Patrol villain.
That's
Yeah.
it totally is. The Crazy Quilt later became part of Batman's Rogues Gallery.
Yeah.
A second quilt, Paul Decker of Earth 1 from 1963, fought the Black Hawk Squadron, but faded into obscurity after 1 issue. Though the Crazy Quilt is called Paul Decker, it is a newer version of the Earth 2 Crazy Quilt rather than an Earth 1 Paul Decker. This Crazy Quilt was also primarily a Batman villain. A new female Crazy Quilt from 2005 appeared in Libra's society, wearing a costume and a helmet of Decker.
I'm pretty sure that in the New 52, Crazy Quilt like falls from a window and dies, like never having really donned the costume. Like he's like in his house and he throws a quilt over him and he like falls down or something like that. Like it's like a reference. It's not, like,
Paul
a real
Decker
thing.
is an ex-painter who led a double life as a master thief. He was blinded by a gunshot wound during a botched robbery. While in prison, he volunteered for an experimental procedure that would restore his vision. There was a side effect, however. Even though he can see, he can only see in blinding, disorienting colors.
Yeah.
This drove him insane, and he adopted the identity of Crazy Quilt.
That's such a Doom Patrol villain. I can't believe he's not a Doom Patrol character.
I know. That's why I chose him. It felt apt for this. Ezra, thank you so much for coming on. I know you've got a ton of stuff to promote, so please tell people what the stuff that they can follow and get and your comics and where to find you online.
Yeah, you can find me on social media at Ezra C. Daniels. I'm on Instagram and Twitter. I'm not on Facebook anymore.
Yeah,
And
fuck Facebook.
Much lighter.
Yeah, fair.
A new edition of my book, Upgrade Soul, was just released last week, and it has a new introduction by Darren Aronofsky and an afterword by Karama Horn, aka Blurred Girl. So that's new collector's hardcover edition with gold foil covers. It's in stores now.
I know what I'm buying. Yeah, that's awesome.
But yeah, that's what I got going on.
That's awesome.
That's
Fuck
awesome.
yeah. That's so cool. Well, we would love to hear from you residents. Did you all guess Crazy Quilt based on that first clue, Dirt Stash? I bet you did. Well, why don't you let us know, or maybe send us in a question for next week's episode.
Next week's episode is the last regular episode of the year.
Oh my God.
Because after that, it's just Docmas.
Yeah,
It's
12 episodes
to the
leading
end
up
of
to
the year.
Christmas that we record over one
Next
day.
week's episode, the theme was selected by our Golden Age patrons. It's tough questions. It's basically Stump the Doc.
Really?
That's
That's
week's episode.
fun. Oh, I
Yeah.
can't wait for that. That's going to be good.
Send your most difficult questions.
Ooh, I'm going to try to find the hardest possible question, like character for you to guess then.
Sure, yeah.
Ooh, this will be good. Yeah, let's really just beat you down before you then drink for a
I'm
day.
going to go and throw the proviso out here that for the sake of interesting content, if I don't know it, I may look stuff up, but I will 100% cop to whether or not I knew it before I looked it up.
Wow, that'll be a nice change.
How dare you?
So why don't you
Stop letting them peek behind the curtain.
what you can send those questions to our various social media platforms like our Facebook,
Dr. DC Podcast.
Twitter,
at Dr. DC.
our Instagram,
Dr. DC Podcast.
our email.
DrDCPodcast@gmail.com.
Come on our subreddit.
r/Dr_DC.
You can always send us a phone call.
208-917-3238.
28917-DCEU if you're nasty.
If you're nasty.
And of course, we are now on TikTok, even though you haven't made content in a while.
That's right. I need to put some new TikTok content up. I'm at Dr. DC.
Yes, that's right.
TikTok is a bewildering place for someone my age, but I'm having some fun.
You can go on our website,
DrDCPodcast.com or .ca.
we always want those 5-star reviews. Make sure to give them to them on the Apple Podcasts, all those different places. If it's not on podcast or Facebook, just take a screenshot, slide in our DMs.
We just got one that was a Yelp review of an unrelated business. And I put we'll read it next week.
Oh, yeah.
I love those, but yeah, take screenshots, especially before like Yelp takes them down or whatever happens to them.
Yeah, I really like that
those,
stuff.
so.
You can send us physical mail to either Richard Eden or Reed Vanya at 301 Hogue Street, Whitehorse, Yukon, Canada, Y1A1V8.
Mm-hmm.
If you want even more content, we have a Patreon you can subscribe to.
Patreon.com/DrDC. $1, $5, $7. They all give you access to the Doc Squad, our awesome fan community. There's lots of fun stuff happening in there. Plus, at the higher levels, you get bonus episodes, videos, and theme polls, and all sorts of fun stuff. And help support us.
But the real reason Ezra's here today, we are slowly circling the wagons, getting Jeremy Carver on the show because we have a whole other podcast called Ghostfacers.
That's right. Ghostfacers, a Supernatural rewatch. We're going through every single episode of CW Supernatural. We are into season 4 at this point in time.
That's right.
But yeah, we talk about real world monster lore and fun behind the scenes stuff. And yeah, it's a good time. Go check it out.
We're coming for you, Carver.
I do feel used right now, but I will put in a good word for you guys.
Shh, it's fine. It's fine. It's fine. It's fine.
God, it was so craven.
I've never done that
That was
before.
outrageous.
All right. Ezra, please say goodbye.
Thank you so much for having me. This is super fun. Great to meet you guys. And yeah, have a great holiday.
Thank
Yeah,
you. You
Thanks
too.
so much, Ezra.
Ciao, ciao.
Adios.
Heroes, they always fight for what is right. Live with danger and adventure, they are men of might.
This was a Brain Freeze podcast.